Miloni, how are you?
Good. How are you? Good to see you, Vin.
Yeah, you too. How about a quick introduction of who you are and what you do?
My name is Miloni Gandhi. I do a variety of things, which sometimes leads to confusion. But if I had to pick three words to describe myself, I would say an international educator and a connector.
Interesting. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's go back to. I know you're from California, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your formative years, and what you were interested in academics, subjects, and things like that.
Sure. I grew up in a smallish town city called Cerritos. It's in Southern California, not too far from Disneyland. And it was a good city to grow up in. It had a lot of diversity, a lot of access to resources that allowed us to, be able to have different kinds of food and close proximity to airports and um, just a good place to be a kid. But I did feel like I outgrew the city as I grew and made my way through my educational career.
Okay. Now, Cerritos, is that like how far a drive from LA's?
If you're at the LAX International Airport and there is no traffic, it's about 30 minutes south of the airport.
Oh, wow. So not bad at all. Very impressive.
It's about 10 minutes away from Disneyland for folks that have been to Disneyland in California. No
Okay.
traffic.
All right. All right. So I assume you went to high school somewhere around there. And did you excel in certain subjects? And what other subjects were you interested?
I was mainly interested in the social sciences and literature. I did go through all of the math and science requisites that were necessary to graduate, but I think if you were to pick interests, social sciences definitely.
Okay. Did you have an idea of what you were? Maybe I want to be a teacher. I want to work for government. I want to work for a big company. I don't know what was your what going through your mind at that time.
I think I always wanted to do something where I would be able to be immersed in the international scene in some way, shape, or form. We were lucky enough to have Model United Nations at our high school, as well as a few different language and culture clubs that allowed us to explore different ethnic enclaves in Los Angeles, as well as have opportunities to travel. And that's what I always gravitated towards. Even as a kid, when we went on family trips, like one of my favorite family trips was going to the United Nations. And I always thought that I would do something along those lines where I would be able to connect with others around the world and be helpful in some way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're international. You have an interest in that, and then you decide to go off to college. So where did you end up going?
I went so far away. I went to UCLA, a whopping 45 minutes away from Cerritos. And
Okay.
that was a great experience. It was not necessarily my first choice, but I think it was a good decision financially. I wanted to be as far as away as I could, but unfortunately, I was not fully funded at institutions that were farther. Um, yeah, it was kind of like a rule that my parents were like, "You're not going far. You will go here."
Did you consider other colleges in
Oh
California
yeah,
or further
well,
away?
NYU was going to be like my dream. I always wanted to
Uh,
be in like a really vibrant urban setting and like, live upstairs and downstairs have your local shop. And I didn't want to drive and wanted to walk and do all that kind of stuff. But
right.
UCLA is where I ended up. And then the irony of the situation is I went to school at UCLA for a really long time and I finished all my degrees there. I
Uh,
did not intend to do that, but that's what happened.
Now I know UCLA is a really famous school, of course, and it's a dream school to a lot of people. Now, did it feel a little bit too big, and you were lost, so to speak, as a 18-year-old freshman, or was it just right for you? What did you feel like when you were attending UCLA?
I think for me, it was a just right situation in terms of size and um, opportunity because I was so interested in a lot of different things that at least being at a school that large meant that if you could find it, it was probably there, but you had to find it. So I was able to find a lot of different things to explore, like whether it's like movie screenings that are from around the world or different languages that might not be offered at other colleges. UCLA has a lot to offer, and it became kind of a dream school for me. I know that I didn't start out that way, but I really loved the education and opportunity that I was able to have for um, almost 15 years, I think, collectively. I even had a first job there. So I spent
Wow.
a lot of time there, and I think UCLA is a really big part of my growing up, and being a Bruin is a big part of my identity now.
Hmm. Now, were you able to, academic wise, to continue the international education and learning route, or what did you end up with in terms of major?
Yeah, I think I definitely was. I'm probably one of the few people who was able to say early on, like, I know I want to do something international and then I'm going to find my way to it. So if you were thinking about college majors, I changed my major many times because I kept discovering things that I was more interested in, but they were all internationally focused in some way. And so ultimately, at the end of my undergraduate degree, or career, I ended up with degrees in international development studies as well as geography. And then I was minoring in political science and Spanish. And all of that
Oh,
was because I started out in each of those majors and I kept just going to discover something else. Like, I didn't discover geography until my senior year, but I was like, I love this so much. I really want to do it.
wow, because you don't hear of too many people majoring in geography. It's something that, not too many people, I haven't seen or heard of too many people majoring in that subject.
Yeah, geography is more than just maps, although there is a route in geography where you could learn all about cartography and be a map maker. There's also different sections like physical geography, human geography. I spent a lot of time physical geography. My favorite was human geography, and it's like, why are our identities who we are based on the places we came from, and what does that teach us? And I thought that was really important when thinking about international affairs and possible like humanitarian work and just all sorts of internationally minded careers.
Okay. All right. So then you're graduating, you've got your degree in hand. What was the next step after that? Or what were your thoughts? Did you want to do an internship, or were you interested in traveling or doing something abroad?
I was 100% interested in being abroad. All I ever wanted was to go and live somewhere else and either be a jet or, work someplace in the Middle East or just have all these like exciting experiences. But alas, I tried to do what was at the time seen as the right thing, and I tried to go to law school. That didn't quite work out. But after I graduated, I did go to law school. I did not stay very long, but I went. And then I left law school. And after I left law school, I was kind of thinking about what I might do next. And that is actually how I ended up both interning in a different congressperson's office and also finding my way to the East West Center.
Mm. Okay, so do think I remember you pursuing law and it not working out. Was it something maybe in you that you just didn't want to do, or you decided maybe, it's not for you, or what were you, what kind of dissuaded you to kind of, maybe this is not what I want to do?
So looking back, there are many kind of tells, I guess. Like, I picked the school where I got financial assistance. And maybe that was not the best school for me, but that's where I had a little bit of money coming my way to kind of lower the overall debt. So that's where I went. But after I got there, like, I just didn't feel like I fit in. The people who were there were really like certain that they wanted to come out and be lawyers. And the only thing I was really interested in law school was like the international law, which you couldn't even really study until your third year. And at some point, I was not performing very well academically, which was also a new kind of feeling because I was a pretty much A student up until then. And in law school, it was like, oh, this is just kind of not how my brain works. And all of my classmates are not exactly kind of like the kind of person that I would normally hang out with. Like there were a few people that I was able to identify with, but everyone there had such a different mindset than me. And I realized what I ultimately wanted to do didn't require a law degree, but I think I was in some way very attracted to the idea that if you went to law school, you became a lawyer and then you had a career and you were kind of done and you were set. But that was kind of confining my personality. And like I said earlier in our introduction, like I do many things and that might confuse people, but when you're a lawyer, you're kind of just being a lawyer for the most part, especially when you get out of law school because you got to work off your debt. Um, and it was just kind of like felt like it was stifling my creativity.
Hmm. Yeah, those are all good indications. And your story is pretty, I don't want to say typical, but you hear that quite often. A lot of people find out that law school is not for them. I mean, I've heard so many stories about that. They go through it and they realize it's not for them. And it looks like you had telltale signs that, that's indicating that maybe law is not the route for you. So kudos to you for finding that out. So I guess it would have been better than finishing 3 years later, getting in the career, deciding it's not for you. So,
Well, the law school also at one point said, if you leave now, we will give you your tuition money back. So I said,
ah,
okay, I will take it.
nice. That's a
I
good
was
way out.
politely asked if I wanted to voluntarily leave because my
Oh,
grades were not so good.
I was gonna say for you struggling in school, that's kind of unheard of. So, yeah. So I guess that's a good indication. So, and then you mentioned after that you I think a Hawaii chapter at East West Center opened up to you. Is that kind of what you ultimately did soon or not too long after that?
I was after law school, I interned at a local congressperson's office and I took kind of a gap year working, just kind of figuring out what was happening and plotting the rest of my life, I guess, or at least like the next immediate step. And in that time, I was um, able to find an opportunity to apply to East West Center for the Asia Pacific Leadership Program. And I was lucky enough to be selected. And from then, my career kind of went in a bit of a different direction. And that's kind of where I still live, kind of in the international education and experiential learning space.
Yes, and that's when I met you in Hawaii.
That's when you met me. Yes.
Yes. So maybe you can describe a little bit about the East West Center and APLP.
Sure. The East West Center is a think tank that brings the East and West together. It's a place of great research. It's based in Honolulu, Hawaii, and Washington, D.C., mostly funded by the US government and other bilateral donors often support specific programs. The Asia Pacific Leadership Program is the flagship leadership program of the East West Center. It's been around now for about 20 plus years, I think, just about 20. And since then, there have been many other iterations of leadership programs and research opportunities. East West Center houses a number of other students who are there for their masters and their PhDs as well. And it's an international living, learning space where you're living with people from all over the Asia Pacific and having amazing opportunities for international exchange.
Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't you say that was probably some of your best years of your life? Certainly was for
I would
me.
say that was the best year of my life. Like, there is no experience that recreates living in Hale Manoa and meeting everyone that we met, traveling together, cooking together, just having all sorts of unique opportunities for discussion and dialogue, showering in our communal showers. Like, it was an interesting place.
Yes, definitely. And I know we had Model United Nations that year, and you were pivotal. I think you were one of the
We
leaders that
did.
helped us
Yeah.
in terms of preparing us for the conference and the training and all that. So you were really in the thick of things right from the beginning.
Yeah, that was a really cool opportunity to have Model United Nations for the college and beyond crowd. It's really popular in the high school world and some like bachelor's degree programs, but this was the first time that I had been engaged with it with folks who were already in their master's and PhD. And it was really cool to see the different kinds of research and exchange that happened when you were working with people of that level.
Hmm. All right. So APLP East West Center chapter is closing for you around 2004, 2005 era. So then what was the next step for you?
Hmm. I believe I started grad school shortly thereafter. I can't remember if I had another gap year in there or not. Like things get fuzzy as we get older, but I definitely moved into grad school not too long after East West Center. And in fact, my grad school advisor was someone who was connected with the East West Center. And that's how I got my introduction. Because of my time at the East West Center, I was introduced to my future advisor at UCLA Grad School of Ed.
Oh, I see. So you went to UCLA for your master's because I know the USC PhD portion was then part of that too, right? Later on.
No, I actually was never at USC for school. I was working there after my PhD for a little while, but I actually did all my degrees at UCLA because I super loved my advisor. It was such a great connection. He also spent time in Hawaii, and it just happened that like we stuck it out together.
Oh, I didn't
I
know
rolled
that.
from master. Yeah, I rolled from master's to PhD.
Oh, okay. So how long is that program? Is like 4 or 5 years?
For me, in total, I took 5 years for both the master's and the PhD.
Okay. And then what was the ultimate, I guess, field of study? Was it international relations or?
It was international education. My research was on students who study abroad in their country of ethnic origin and how it impacts their sense of self and identity. So I was studying heritage learners.
Oh, wow. So you were able to continue on that international education route pathway.
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
kind of made it my thing.
All right. And then that led to working at USC, right? Not too long after that?
Yeah, after that, I pivoted. I wasn't sure I wanted to be 100% academic. And so an opportunity presented itself to work as an international recruiter for the undergraduate programs at the University of Southern California. And so I did that for almost 5 years. And I had the ability to travel and recruit in different parts of the world. I spent a lot of time in India. And I also was working with students from really like the Middle East and North Africa and all over the Pacific as well.
Wow, that sounds like an interesting um, job. Like, was that like just an amazing position for you?
It was a really interesting learning opportunity because I had never spent much time thinking about international enrollment management as a specific career choice, but it is one more field for those who are interested in all things international to consider. And it's a really large field because every college and institution around the world has international admissions officers. But to me, coming out of grad school, I hadn't known about it. So I spent some time getting to know that field and figuring out, what are the most helpful things for students and their families to know when they're considering sending their students abroad for an education. And it was a good way for me to kind of connect what I was doing, looking previously at American students who are studying abroad and then working with the other side, so international students who wanted to think about the United States as a place of study. So it was an interesting juxtaposition, but also it kind of brought full circle my experiences in international exchange and study abroad.
Now, what I hear, UCLA and USC, they're kind of arch rivals, right?
They
Both
are, yeah.
LA schools, California, big powerhouses in sports. Now, is there um, some differences you appreciate or something you liked or didn't like about one campus versus the other? I know UCLA is a big public university, I think, and then USC is more private.
Yeah,
Was
USC
it?
and UCLA are night and day for many reasons, one of which is just kind of the size of the campus right off the bat is so different. But in terms of opportunity, I think both schools offer a lot of great opportunities. It's more about what kind of learning environment do you want to be in and where do you want to spend your time in terms of being in a smaller group where you get to know more people closely, or do you want to be in a larger group, which would be the case at UCLA, where you have an opportunity to connect with many different people, but maybe not so deeply? At USC, I felt like the students were able to connect on a deeper level with the folks that they were living with and their faculty members by default, versus at UCLA, you had to really take it upon yourself to build those relationships and continue to nurture them across your career. But there are positives and there are negatives to each school, mainly depending on the course of study you choose, because each school has their strengths.
Hmm. Now, I know you bleed Bruin in your blood, but are there some things that you loved about USC that you really appreciate more?
That's very difficult to answer in a fully equally comparative way because my college going experience at UCLA was so different than what I was then be able to see behind the scenes working as an administrator at USC. What we were doing for the students at USC to give them the information that they needed to choose the right major for entry, to feel welcome when they were making their decisions on what schools to choose. It was like a whole different world compared to when I went to school. And I chose a school personally simply because I was told that was the best school that I got into. That was something my parents were willing to support. So that's where I had to go.
Mm-hmm.
Versus 15 years later, like students have more ability to actually shop around. Space and time brought people so much closer. Like I went to school before everyone had a cell phone, right? But now
Mm-hmm.
cell phones, smartphones, space doesn't seem so bad because you could just FaceTime every second if you wanted to. And so it was really different in seeing how students think about where they're going to go to school when I was working at USC versus what we had when I was going to school as an undergrad myself.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it's neat that you had the two different experiences, one UCLA and then USC in terms of work and study and all that stuff. So very interesting. All right. So after your chapter at USC, then you move on. Did you get another job in academia, or where did your path lead to then?
Yeah, I went to, I guess I stayed in academia. I went to another administrator role where I was in the Bay Area of California and I was working with the district office for community college district. And that was new for me because up until that point, I had only been at four-year institutions, tier one research institutions, large private schools. Um, Community college is a whole different world, and that was really awesome to get to learn about. And ultimately, after being an administrator, I was granted an opportunity to, in fact, teach. And during that time, I also started my own consulting firm, just Experience International. And so now, where we are in time, I guess I am both the founder and consultant of Experience International, and I'm an adjunct faculty member at a couple of the community colleges here in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay. So how long have you been in Northern California then?
So I've been here now for almost 8 years.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you've got the Southern California girl in you and all your education, but yet the last 8 years now you've shifted up to Northern California. Wow, so that's a big change for you.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot colder. My first
Yeah.
year in the Bay, I was very cold.
Okay. Right. Now, let's move on. Then you had the consulting thing that you do. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, Experience International, its focus is on place-based experiential learning, and that can be in any context. So, whether students need help trying to figure out where they want to study or go take a gap year, or also with schools who want to have internationalization of their campuses. So, for example, I was most recently in Peru, helping three public universities internationalize their campuses entirely. So, whilst we take it for granted coming from large institutions who have a lot of interest and funding in being internationally focused, both in their curriculum and overall um, opportunities for students and staff, there are still a lot of colleges and universities around the world who have not really had the ability to spend too much time thinking about what internationalizing their colleges, campuses, classrooms, staff and faculty development would look like. And that's where I can come in and help provide kind of a menu of opportunity for folks who don't know what they don't know. So, in a lot of places, they're very local still, especially state universities in different cities. They have a very local focus. And so, one of the universities that I had been at, even though they actually had on paper exchange opportunities that they had built, their students didn't know that they existed. And most of the students still went to that university just for the majors that would have yielded a job in the local economy. Like, for example, mining. A lot of the students wanted to work in mining because that's what their family members did, that's what they knew about. But even within mining, there's so much opportunity to have international collaboration and experiential learning opportunities for the students. So that was kind of one of my more recent projects. And then after that, I was in Senegal for a little bit of professional development where I was also able to connect with folks who were working on international experiential learning. And that was really awesome because for me personally, it was my first time in Western Africa. And it's such a booming place that it was really exciting to see kind of the um, just overall energy that they have for everything that is happening in the arts and culture spaces, as well as internationalizing academics overall.
Wow, you play such an important role. International education the last few decades is that's all about universities and colleges. They're all pursuing that. What I remember, that's always talked about. So your role and then what you do is so important to cultivate and build those ties and then help those schools arrange those relationships. So that's pretty amazing. That's great that you've were able to use your education, your international experience, and your cultural diversity and all that stuff. Amazing.
Thanks.
Very cool. Okay. As we wrap up here, any maybe last words, bit of advice, or anything else you want to add?
Well, I will just tell anyone who's considering getting out there and, learning something that they might not be familiar with or taking that first step and taking a trip somewhere. I know it can be scary to think about traveling not just outside of your hometown, to another state, but also like internationally. That could be something really difficult for some folks to wrap their head around. Just go ahead and travel somewhere. Like, just go out there and explore what you can, even if it's in your own city. Like, take the opportunity to learn by experiencing it yourself as opposed to just always reading about it or watching it on TV. Go out there and do it for yourself.
Yeah, good words of advice. I know back when I was in college, I did study abroad in France just because I needed to finish my language requirement. And then so when I went out there, that just opened my eyes to the whole world. I'd never been to Europe before, and I just started to see just the art, the history, the culture of how other people live, and it just sparked an interest in me to see more of the world, and so that was kind of the beginning for my interest. So it's great to see that the work that you do too. So, and then lastly, where can people find you, Maloney, if they want to learn more?
You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my preferred method of communication. Pretty easy to find. It's just my name, Miloni Gandhi. You search that and I'll pop up.
Okay, very well. So thank you so much, Maloney. Really appreciate chit chatting with you.
Same here, Vin. Thank you.
You bet.